phone is almost dirty. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. I'm here. Let's see if anybody else shows up on a Monday night, even though it is a Monday night football night with the Detroit Lions. I don't, but they're not playing for another hour or so. So we will see if anybody shows up. Again, I had to postpone this from last night till tonight. I just had things going on. So we are going to talk about, I don't know, we'll talk about a bunch of stuff. We'll talk about anything you guys and gals want to talk about. Looks like I got one person here, or maybe they're gone. So I'm not going to go too much further until I get a confirmation that you guys and gals can see me and hear me okay. So I'm going to wait on that. Besides, I'm sitting outside and it's nice out. I'm in the boat. I'm in the riverboat. I'm in my driveway. There's my truck. There's my old wood truck over there. I'm in the boat, just sitting in the driveway. Hey, Trav, how you doing? Just sitting out here having a nice night. Going to talk some fishing, some river fishing stuff. Hey, Big Lake Little Boat. How you doing, Brian? Good to see you, man. Hey, Craig, how are you? So I'm guessing you guys can see me and hear me okay. If you can't, let me know that too, please. Because that's what I want to know. Scott Krieg, Lions tonight. Heck yeah, buddy. Heck yeah. Craig Rao looking good. Mark, you know I'm not looking good. That's a lie, but I appreciate it. Okay, Lima Charlie, got it. All right, we're good. Good. Glad to hear. Okay, so here's what's going on tonight. I'll give you a little breakdown on a fishing report, and then we're going to go over, like I already kind of previewed there. I'm going to go over, tonight I'm going to go over my lake, or not my lake, my God. I'm going to go over my favorite stuff and my setups for king fishing in the river. I got my skein rods down there. I've got my casting rods on both sides. Like I said, I'm sitting here in the Stealth Craft right here in my driveway. So we're going to go over all that. And next Sunday, next beautiful Sunday, I will go over my steelhead setup, or my setups rather, because it's not really different, but it is different. So, but a lot of these things kind of they fade back and forth. So, some things will work both ways, but you wanna pay attention to the small details on that. Anyway, hope that makes sense to everybody. So, fishing report around here, the Big Lake, a lot of steelhead coming in. By a lot I mean that seems to be the majority of the catch right now. Haven't heard of too many big kings still being out there. I'm sure there's probably a couple adults still being, lingering adults are still being caught out there. But for the most part, it's all steelhead out there right now, and 2 and 3 year olds with a few coho as well. Steelhead are now starting to move in closer. They were a week ago. They were more offshore. And by offshore, it could have been 7 miles out. It could have been 12 miles out. Could have been whatever, depending on your area. But it sounds like now they're starting to move in closer to the shore, which tells me that they're going to get ready soon to go into the rivers to winter over for the. Why do they do it? I don't understand why they do that. I'm no biologist. Why the steelhead go into the river, for the winter instead of staying out in the Big Lake? I'm sure everything when it comes to fishing has to do with food, everything. So it has to do, I'm sure, with something. Maybe they feel more comfortable in the river over the winter. Maybe there is more food. Even though I know steelhead can go a long time without eating. They'll actually consume the scales on their body as nutrients, because they can go so long without eating. So anyway, the steelhead are starting to move in. They're starting to get ready to come into the river to winter over. That's a good thing, because the kings in the river around here anyway, the water is so stinking warm. I feel bad for those fish because they're going into that river and they're just sitting in there. They're absolutely baking in that 70-degree water. It's low water as well. The hot sun. I mean, it's been warm again this week. It's been back in the 70s again this week. So I know that they're just sitting in there just roasting, trying to find the deepest holes they can, trying to find some cooler water. But seems like the majority of the fish now are mid-river or all the way up to the dam. And of course, I'm just talking around here in Manistee. So I did talk to one boat today that I think they had 3 fish up by the dam. Talked to another boat yesterday, had a couple fish mid-river. I haven't fished in a couple days. We had a couple fish mid-river. We had 8 or 9 bites, but only that's all you're going to get anyway. If you land or if you hook up on 12, you're probably going to get 2, maybe 3. Those things fight like animals. So anyway, fishing on the river has been not great. It could be a lot better, I think, if the weather conditions were a little bit more prevalent, a little cooler. Some rain would certainly help bring the water levels up, get the water, the currents flowing. Um, you know, that would certainly help. Anyway, casting stick baits early in the morning, like before dark. We're getting bit then, and I'll go over some of the stuff that we're throwing. That's no problem. So stick baits is what I've been doing like early in the morning, and you can, my clients, you know, if they haven't been on the river before, and when you get out there and you're setting up in the dark and you're starting to throw your stick baits, those fish are crashing all around you. I mean, they're jumping within feet of the boat, and I'm talking literal feet. There was one that jumped so close to the boat the other day. If I'd been fast enough, I could have plucked him out of the air. So the clients are just, if they have never been on the river, it's so much fun to just watch them, ooh and ah over all that stuff. It is, I mean, to me, it's even still pretty dang cool. But yeah, they're up porpoising, really, really early. Much more aggressive early in the morning. That bite would linger on, like I said, if the weather conditions were more beneficial to them. So stick baits, usually about half hour, 45 minutes after the sun's up, I'm switching over to drifting skein, through some of the deeper holes. And we've had hits on both. So both are working. But I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to go over all that stuff with you guys right here pretty quick. But if you got any questions, you'll feel free to throw them out. You'll probably be better off waiting till the end when I'm done yapping to throw your questions out, because once I get yapping, I don't slow down too much. Anyway, let's let me ask you this. Okay, so if anybody has any questions right now before I go on this, throw them out there. I know we only got about 4 dozen people on there. That's great. I appreciate everybody coming on here. It's a Monday night. It's a little different. But if you have any questions before I get going into this, I'm going to give you about 20, 30 seconds to throw them out there. And then I'll start running over some of the things that we use out here. Anyway, Lions tonight. Yeah, Monday Night Football. Good to see. Let's go some Lions. I think they're on a good path to victory for this week, but we'll see. We got the Vikings tonight. Is that right? Is it the Vikings? I think so. Yeah, look forward to it. All right. Yeah, Joe. Yeah, maybe so. All right, let's get into this. All right, so like I said, throwing stick baits early in the morning. This is, where do I want to start here? We'll start over on this side. So Stealthcraft boats are pretty slick because they give me rod out. I mean, I can keep my rods on the sides. I can keep them down below. It's nice to have these set up. So I'll give you a couple rod and reel options that I like a lot. Oh, of course, everything's going to tangle up right when I want to grab it. All right. So that one right there, that's probably my number one spinning rod combo. Well, one of them anyway. But that is probably my number one spinning reel that I do like. That's the Akuma Kmar 3000 series. And any 3000 series spinning reel is going to get you in the ballpark. A good drag, of course, is important. I crank right-handed. Of course, I have to change that over quite often for customers. They like left-handed cranks. But I have braid backer on that, and that is 25-pound braid. And, you can go Power Pro. You can go just a decent braid is going to do you well. 25-pound braid, and that's going up. This is a Riversider. I'll give you the specs on this, and you're not going to believe it when you see it. Let me see here. This is a 10-foot medium. Let's see, my eyes are so bad. 10-foot length, ultralight action. It's saying, I think, only 2 to 4 pounds. This thing right here is a whooping stick. It is like it says, it's 10 feet long, and it's a long rod. It has a tremendous amount of action. My number one rods are Nova tackle rods. Number one. But when it comes to throwing stick baits, you don't have to break the bank on these things. If you want to go Nova tackle rods, of course, they're going to do you very, very well. But if you want to stay on a budget, these Riversider 10-foot ultralights. I tell you what, you wouldn't think that thing could handle a king. It handles a king, no problem. Pair that up like our 3000 series braid backer, and I have that running all to about a 3-foot fluoro leader that I tie on. Hold on, I'll see if I can show you that. This is not real easy doing this one-handed in the driveway. Anyway, I got a fluoro leader tied on the end of that braid. It's about a 3-foot fluoro leader. That is 20-pound fluoro. I like having a little lighter fluoro than the braid. you're going to break something off. I mean, the fluoro is going to break for the braid. But these things are going to get tangled up on the bottom and the logs and everything else all the daggone time. And then I have that. You can either tie it directly to the bait like I have there, or you can put it on a small snap. And I got a small snap on some of these other ones. But that right there is my absolute go-to for casting stick baits. Okuma Kmars, Riverside rods, or Nova Tackle rods. If you gave me a secondary option, I'm gonna throw that up there. Hopefully not step on it later and break it. Another really good setup is this Fluger President. That Fluger President has an outstanding drag on it. Riversider, that's got a Nova Tackle stick bait on it. And don't overlook these Nova Tackle stick baits. They are juicy good. Juicy good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Storm Thunderstick Juniors are some of my absolute favorites. But these Novas, there's one right there. These Novas have a wire through design on the bodies, which means that you're not going to bust that bait up. And if it how, you're still going to hang on to that fish. So anyway, that is my setup for Kings. As far as stick baits, it's nothing. It's not brain science in any way, rocket surgery, however you want to say it. With a decent drag on a good night. Now, Tangle Tackle, the owner there, Bud, he asked me the other day when I was in there, he asked me if I would try out this reel right here for him. I don't even know what the heck that thing is. What is that thing? It's a mystery. That's what it is. Fish HMX. All I know is it was about $14. And we've caught nice kings on it. Actually works pretty well. So, don't feel like you got to go out there and break the bank wide open when it comes to, throwing stick baits for these kings. Like I said, you can stay on a pretty good budget. I'll give you some of my favorite colors and favorite things to throw real quick. I already mentioned Thunderstick Juniors. They're a staple out there. Oh, that hook is messed up. Ooh, I got to fix that one. That's the only thing I don't like about the T-Stick Juniors is the hooks are not real good on them. Most of the time I'm changing those things out. But that one, that's called the Luminous, or Herringbone, I believe that's called. Excellent. Another one of the Tiger patterns. Fire Tiger, the Red Tiger, like the other one I had on. I can bring that back. This is, you're probably not going to be able to see that. Anyway. I'm sure somebody's out there laughing at me right now. Anyway, Fire Tiger, Red Tiger, those are going to be your number ones. Big gaudy patterns. This is a Lutke, one of their stick baits. I think it's got a monster bill on it. Dives like crazy. That's been really good as well. That's one of those Bay Rat lures from Dreamweaver. That was really good for me a few days ago. But don't overlook throwing things like, your typical Hottentots. Those Hottentots can do you really well also, and your Wiggle Warts. Those things will catch fish for you also. I mean, look at that. Look at that Fire Tiger. That thing has been absolutely mauled by kings over the time. So, yeah, in gold, in the Fire Tiger, natural silvers, natural fluorescent, or not fluorescent, but chartreuse. With a lot of rattle, a lot of movement, that's going to do you pretty darn well. You can also throw spinners. That's one of the Lutke spinners. That's in a Fire Tiger pattern. Those things are going to do fine also. Little spoons as well. Some of the Castmasters, some of the little Cleos, things like that. They're going to do fine for you also. Just remember, everything out there has a different dive, a different rate of dive. Most of these things are floaters or slow descenders. I know these Novas, they actually sink. So you can chuck that into a hole and you let that thing sit there for a minute if you want to get down even deeper, and it'll find its way down there. But many of these are floats. Obviously, your spoons are going to be a little heavier. They're going to get down a little deeper possibly, so keep all that in mind. All right, let me get this out of the way. And we'll show you some of my float setups that I really like. All right. Here's my number one float setup for kings right here. Let me get this out. And doing things one-handed is a pain in the butt. Holy crap. All right, float setup. This is a Nova Tackle. This is a NTX 1145 9'6" spiral wrapped bait casting rod. So 9'6" spiral wrapped. And I have clients ask me all the time why my rods are broken. You know, they're looking at the spiral wrapping. That one's actually yeah, that's right. They're looking at the spiral wrapping and ask me why my stuff is broken and my rods are wrong. And I have to explain them. Spiral wrapped, you know, the line just flows off them so much easier. They're just much more conducive to nice smooth drifts out there. So anyway, Nova Tackle, like I said, 9'6" spiral wrap bait caster. This rod is carbon fiber wrapped over fiberglass. So this thing has just an incredible feel to it. You feel every little tunk on this thing, even if the king is just, if he's just down there sniffing that skein ball. If he's just doing that, you can actually feel that in this rod. So really, really sensitive rod, really easy to run. I couple this up with an Akuma cold water low profile. And I believe this is the 30 series. And this is the same setup, or the same reel rather, that I use for running my plugs later in the winter. So that's why it has a line counter on it. You do not need a line counter on this thing. This one just happens to have it on it because when I'm running my plugs during the winter time, I like to have all my plugs set back in the same distance. So when I'm backing steelhead into a hole or through a hole, I can actually keep everything right there in line where I want it to be, and I can chase them or bounce them back into the back end of a hole, and a lot of times get them to, you know, get a bite out of aggression that way, that way rather. But you do not need to have a line counter on your reel. That reel right there is really, really smooth. It pays out really nicely. I have that with braid as a main line on there. Again, that's 25 pound. I believe it's Power Pro. If I remember right, who cares? It's braid. It's strong. And then I have that down to, let's see if I can do this here. I have that down to a Nova Tackle 19 gram fixed float. By fixed float, I mean it has surgical tubing on the line on the top and the bottom of the float, and that's how that thing stays fixed. Now, one little pro tip I'll give you here: put one piece of surgical tubing on the top, put two on the bottom, because eventually, after you're setting the hook on these things for so long, you know, ripping these things, one of those pieces of surgical tubing is going to break. And instead of having to take everything off there and put another one back on, you got a spare one right there. Always keep a spare on there. So you can just make it work that way. Anyway, Power Pro down, or braid down to a, I have an inline weight here, and this is a 1/2 ounce Nova Tackle inline weight. It has actual little swivels on top and bottom, so it's really nice to tie onto. Gram fixed float, 1/2 ounce. So that'd be 14 grams of weight right there. And I'll normally put on one or two more fixed round shot. You know, you don't want to use the wing shot because it can twist up the line as it's going through the water if you're casting it. As you're making your drifts, the wings on some of those, or the wings on the shot, can actually cause line twists. So you always want to use round shot. But I'm using I believe this is an SSG. So I think it's like a 1.6 or 1.7 gram round shot right there. And I'm normally running one or two on there. So I used to fret this way too much. Way too much about how much weight I was running. If it's the right amount of weight, if it's not, my brain would start breaking. What I found out is just watch your float, how it's riding in the water. That line right there, that black line, I believe it's called the watercock line for whatever reason. But that line right there, as long as that thing is riding right there in the water in that yellow, you're fine. That's right where you want it. In fact, I tend to go on the heavier side of the weight, and a lot of times that water line will be right up against that, you know, the top part of that float, right up to the pink there. Because when a fish hits us, I don't want them to feel any resistance when they're pulling that float underwater. If you have it underweighted, they're going to feel something. And those fish are skittish. Kings don't really care about line. They really don't care about boats. But if they bite onto something and it doesn't feel right to them, they have a tendency to let go pretty quick. So watch your floats and watch how they're riding in the water. That's gonna tell you if you have enough weight on. So fixed float down to an inline weight, one or two. Normally, like I said, I think these are SSGs. Watch your float to make sure it's riding right in the water column. And then I have that on a piece of fluoro, about a 2-foot piece of fluoro underneath that, down to my number 2 octopus hook. And I have an egg knot tied onto that. So if you don't know how to tie an egg knot, and they can be somewhat tricky, you do it a couple times and you get the hang of it. If you can tie a snell, you can tie an egg knot. But if you don't, and I'm one of those people, I really don't want to sit there and tie up a million daggone leaders every day. No Tackle sells pre-tied leaders, egg loop knots on them. So you get 10 to a package. I don't know what that costs, but those are 2-aught pre-tied leaders. Those are the red hooks, are the ones I prefer. You can go nickel or silver, whatever. That's fine. Also, I just like the red because it blends into the skein really well. But you can get a 10-pack of those. I think it's like $6 or $7. So if you buy up, however many you think you're going to need, I keep all mine in a leader keeper. Dig down here. Oh, I just put a hook into my stomach. Oh, I'm fine though. I literally did. I just put a hook right into my shirt. It's gonna stay there for a minute. Anyway, this is a leader keeper. You can put all of those right in there, and when you need a new leader, and you're gonna need it all day long, because you're gonna be catching stumps and logs a lot more than you're gonna be catching fish. But when you need a new one, you just grab one of those hooks, you pull it straight up out of there, and it comes out really, really easy. So that's the way I do it. I load that thing up every time. There, I got that out of my skin. Thank you. Those are sharp. Yeah, if you don't want to tie the egg loop knot, you don't have to. Buy the pre-tied. They work great. If you want a leader feeder, you can find them on Amazon. They're pretty daggone handy. It takes 1 or 2 times of using it to get the thing to figure it out. But man, do they work. What I'm running on these is big skein balls. And I know I'm not going to be able to make this thing work one-handed. So if you go on YouTube and you just look up some of the egg loop knot videos, you'll see exactly what happens. What happens is you pull that slack out right there at the base of the hook, right there at the bottom of the shank. It makes a loop. You take your skein ball, you put it inside that loop, you let it close back onto itself, and you're fishing. Now, there's always controversy on how big of a skein ball you should be running. My normal rule of thumb is about there to the top of my thumb is about the right size for skein balls. Some guys run ginormous chunks of skein, and there's days that it absolutely works, but you don't have to do that. I have found that sometimes that smaller presentation or the mid-range presentation is much more what they want. One other option you can run, soft beads, and these are wonderful. These are from Nova Tackle. They come they're on a string, so they're easier to get onto the line. You can slide them up and down the line wherever you want. And then you're just using a normal bobber stops to keep them in place. Nova Tackle also has a different bobber stop that has a much wider flange on it, and that'll keep them in place probably a little better. But your normal bobber stops, if you already got them, fine. So that's the way that you get those soft beads in there. I think these are maybe 16 mils, maybe even 18 mils. But man, oh man, they love these things. A lot of time I'm running, a skein on the hook, and about 3 inches above that, 2 to 3 inches above that, I'm running one of these soft beads, and that really gets them going sometimes. So pretty easy setup, guys and gals. Pretty easy. If you can tie a couple knots, you're going to be fine. If you can throw a spinning reel, you're going to be fine. You do not need to cast a bait caster. Most of the time we're fishing right here off the back of the boat, just letting it fall right off the back of the boat and let it drift through the holes, right behind us. If I have 3 guys on here, it can get a little congested. But I can get 3 guys on the back of the boat. If you need to throw off the side of the boat, you can run spinning rods and reels running your skein. I've done it before. It's not my preferred way to do it. The reason being is I just think you get much smoother drifts. Much smoother drifts with a bait caster than you do with a spinning reel. And then also when you need to set the hook, it's much easier just to clamp that thumb down and give a big old rip than having to grab that spinning reel, close the bail, or crank the reel, close the bail, or cup the top of the reel with your hand to stop the line, and then you can set the hook. So I think you get much faster, much faster hook sets and much more solid hook sets with a bait caster. And then again, you're also getting much smoother floats, much smoother drifts. It's much easier to mend your line with a bait caster as well, in my opinion. And I'm sure there's people out there that are going to disagree with me. I know guys in the Pacific Northwest, they run a ton of spinning reels for, for drifting skeins and floats, things like that. And they got it down to a science. I guess maybe I'm just lazy. I'm going to do it. It works really well for me, and I love the bait casters for floating. You can run a center pin also. I see guys out there all the time running center pins for kings. I can't say I wouldn't do it. It'd probably be a blast to hook into a king with a center pin, but you got that 1-to-1 gear ratio. Holy cow! You better be able to reel like a maniac sometimes when you got that fish on there. Anyway, saying the catfish people use boards to get the baits away from the boat. Yeah, I do that all the time actually. When I'm fishing for steelhead in the winter, I run. It's a good shot of my chin there. I'm running these, the mini ninjas, and when I'm just plugging for steelhead, this is exactly what I'm running. I'm putting these on my plug rods, and I can actually wiggle these boards into some of the holes that maybe I can't get the boat into, and a lot of times that can be really useful. So yeah, I do the same thing. It definitely works. Good question, Scott. What else you got? Oh, a couple things that you're going to want to have if you're in the river. Get yourself a lure retriever. This is a Frabill. I don't know what that model is or anything like that, but it's an extendable rod with a nice big old spring or whatever you want to call it on the end. You can get the lures and things out of the wood and the timber that way. Or the other thing I use is my little dog here. So this is the hound lure retriever, I think it's called. That just slides onto the line. You hook it on the line. You let that, and that dog is heavy. It's cast iron or whatever it is. You let that thing slide down the line, and I use a leash, just a retractable leash. Excuse me. Let that thing slide down the line, and then you can bump it onto the lure, bump it off the log, or even hook those hooks right onto that dog, and it works great. Yeah, that dog is great. Yeah, Scott, I agree with you. The thing is wonderful. So make sure if you're gonna fish a river, get those things at least get that dog. I think it's $12, $14, something like that on Amazon. The other big question I get a lot, in fact, I just got the question again today, is can I take a prop boat out on the river? Well, it depends on your river. You can on the Big Manistee, but you better know the river pretty darn well, because it's not going to take long. I mean, I bump logs all the time, especially when the water changes. It's so low right now. We have logs that are coming up that haven't been seen in probably years, and normally you can go right over them, and all of a sudden the next day, in years past you could scoot right over them, and you go out this year and there's logs sticking up where you never saw them before. So you better know the river pretty darn well. One other thing I'll say on that is this. Hold on. I'm just going to touch on this real quickly. This is a Garmin Striker Vivid 9, and it's one of the cheaper options that Garmin sells. And by cheap, I don't mean that it's like worthless. I mean, it just doesn't have all the bells and whistles as a lot of the other ones have. The reason I went with that Striker 9, to do your own research on this, is that unit, and I can't really show you right now because I'm not on the water, but that unit has a mapping feature, which you're not going to be able to find a mapping chip for a fish finder for your rivers, your main river systems, because rivers change all the time. The depths change every year. That thing right there has a mapping feature where if I turn on record, it will actually map out that river floor and show me the deeper holes. And I can color code it as well. So the way I have it set up, I think 0 to 3 feet deep is red, 3 to 6 feet is green, 6 feet to 10 feet is a light blue, then 10 feet to 20 feet is a dark blue. And that way, when that thing is done mapping out the river for me, anytime I'm back in that area, I have that now recorded on that system, showing me exactly where the deeper holes are. So if you're new to a system, if you're new to a river, that thing will save you a lot of time and a lot of questions bugging the other guides about where the best spots are. You can actually use that thing to really dial in where you probably want to fish. Another option I'm looking at putting onto this boat is a Garmin live scope. I think a live scope, using it to map out some of these holes, see where the fish are in the holes, could be an absolute game changer. Absolute game changer. So I'm looking into that option also. It's getting dark out here. Better hurry this up. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. Show or throw me your questions. I hope I was able to help somebody else out there, or somebody out in a small way. How small of a ninja board for a 200 copper? I'd still use the big one. That's all I use on the big lake, Scott. I just use the big, I think they're 9.5-inch ninja boards. If I'm wrong, if they're 11s, I'm wrong. But I just use the big ones for all my stuff. It pulls everything just fine. All right, throw me some other questions if you got them. Otherwise, I'm going to go and watch some lions. Take care of all this stuff. You're welcome, Scott. No problem. Thanks, everybody, for being here on a Monday. I know it's an off night. I'll be back here next Sunday night, and we're going to go over steelhead setups for the river, some of my favorite ways to do it. Very, very similar, but also a lot of differences. How much longer do I think salmon trips, how will I be doing salmon trips on the river? I'm guessing there's going to be salmon in there to the end of October, maybe 3 weeks in October. We'll know more as the weather plays out and see what happens. But there's going to be salmon in there for a while. They're just that plentiful, and I think there's still a whole bunch more. I'm hoping there's still a whole bunch more to move up from the lower parts of the river, or maybe even from the big lake into the river. We'll see how it plays out. But if you're looking to take a trip with me, I'd be happy to take you. My website is darkbluecharters.com. My phone number's on there. Give me a call. If it's crap fishing, I'm going to tell you it's crap fishing, and I'm going to tell you, don't book with me right now. Wait until it changes. I'm not that guy that just wants to take your money and take you on a boat ride. If it's garbage, I'm going to tell you it's garbage. So call me with confidence. I'm going to tell you honestly what's going on out there. All right, be happy to do that for you. Thanks everybody for the nice comments and whatnot. I've been rambling now for a while. Let's go Lions. All right, cool. All right, any questions, put them in the comments. Don't forget, October 20th, we're doing the telethon for Repos Rescues live stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll cover more on that a little later on. It's getting dark out here, though, so I better get going. Guys and gals are all the best. I appreciate everybody being here, and we will see everybody next Sunday night.